Welcome to the Mo podcast.
A place where individual stories come to life.
This is how we need to be communicating with people. This is how we support people's personal development.
It's important to speak about people believing in people.
The more you're able to let go of your limitation, the more you step into your power, your inner authentic power.
Mo, a place for me, others, everyone.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Mo Podventures. Today we're joined by Felicity Rose, Sunderland Hall, and we're going to be talking through their story. Felicity, huge welcome to the podcast. Give us a Mo introduction in that unique way without referencing other people, without referencing numbers or job titles. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Alex. Lovely to be here with you today. Hello, everyone. So who am I? I would describe myself as like a grounded optimist with a touch of naivete in there. Like I'm very hopeful. I'm anchored in like my lived experiences. I'd say I'm a very compassionate person. I absolutely love people, love the little things in life, try to live as like the full human being that I am. And I would say I'm also quite curious about many, many things. So, yeah.
Nice. And where might we find Felicity on a random Wednesday afternoon?
On a random Wednesday afternoon, where might you find me? Well, to be honest, probably working here. But come the evening, definitely like sitting outside with my three little cats, having a nice Kombucha or an non-alcoholic beer with my friends. Yeah, that sounds like a nice Wednesday evening.
Awesome. Well met. And would you give us a little overview of where your portfolio career is at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. So, well, title, I suppose, is that I'm a life coach. I have my own life coaching business called FRSH Coaching that I officially started just over a year ago now, which is really exciting. I am a life coach trainer with Mo, which is one of the biggest joys that I get to do in my career. I love getting paid to help people become more of who they are and spread that loveliness into the world. I am also currently training to get my PCC qualification with the ICF so that I can be a trainer with another company and train more people to get that qualification. And yeah, I suppose I occasionally run like the odd workshop and group coaching session and stuff like that.
Nice. And you mentioned the PCC qualification with the ICF. ICF is, for those that aren't aware, is the International Coaching Federation. And the PCC, would you talk us through what that is and what that abbreviation stands for?
Of course. To be completely honest, I don't actually know what the abbreviation stands for. I could probably look it up, but off the top of my head, don't know. It's basically just the level 2 level of coaching qualifications, if you will. So you have the first one, which is like a foundational level, where they ask you to meet a certain amount of hours of coaching, a certain amount of training, and then mentorship, supervision, stuff like that. And the level 2 is basically you have to have done 500 hours of coaching, 125 hours of training, 10 hours of mentorship. You have to pass an exam. And yeah, I think that's it. So it's quite a long process. It takes quite a long time, but I'm actually really enjoying it.
Yeah, brilliant. And I just looked at what you're talking, the professional certified coach, PCC. And yeah, 500 hours coaching, 125 hours of coach specific training. Yeah, that's significant. And you said you're doing this qualification in order to
be a trainer, basically, similar to what I do at Mo, where I basically accompany a group of people throughout, I think it's a 4-month period where we meet weekly and just focus on different strengths and different characteristics, and competencies is the correct word that the ICF uses, but just basically focus on different aspects of coaching and do a lot of practice and get to be in a space with other coaches, which is lovely.
Amazing. Yeah, looking forward to being on call with you after you've been in that role for a few months and thinking about what you've learned and your reflections on how this company, this group does coach training differently to Mo. As you know, we're always improving the Mo course and taking on feedback. So it'll be really interesting to hear how the coaching differs. Okay, so that's your portfolio, and I'm always really interested to hear when people are doing workshops or group work. Would you tell us a little bit about what kind of flavor that group work has had?
Of course. So my most recent one was actually last week, which was for a group of six women entrepreneurs in France. So
Mhm.
very locally to where I live, about 20-minute drive. And the structure of it was basically a group coaching session, but as an introduction to coaching, because a lot of them had, well, they didn't really have a well, my version of what I call coaching. Basically, they might have had their own expectations and stuff like that. So it's basically
Mhm.
just an introduction. But one of the main pillars that I try to bring into all of my coaching sessions or any training that I do is that you can, if you want to, you can show up as you are. And I really kind of got this moment last week where I felt like, okay, I've made it. That's actually coming into reality. Because there was a woman who messaged me beforehand and asked if she could bring her 2-month-old child
Wow.
with her. Which of course I was like, yes, amazing, that would be lovely. But it was just so beautiful to think that there are spaces where you can be an entrepreneur and a mom, and you can combine them together, and that's completely okay.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah.
amazing. Yeah, and well done, and thank you from the universe for creating these spaces.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm always so interested about group work, because it can take such different structures, it can take such different configurations. How did you structure the session so that each person felt like they were getting a lot of, or that's bespoke, personalized feel that coaching is so valuable for, while also being in a group setting?
Yeah, completely. So I always like to have a bit of a conversation with the people who are going to be taking part in the workshop before I actually plan it, because I tailor it and change it every single time. So obviously the fact that this is entrepreneurs, women, and that it was in French, which is actually the first time I've done a group coaching session in French, that in
Hey,
itself was quite exciting.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I kind of put together a couple of themes for them, whether they wanted to focus on like a group coaching session, but more about how they show up in their businesses and where they want to get to, if they wanted to have a bit more of a career orientated or a general kind of coaching, life coaching session, see where it takes them. And like a couple of other things. And I was quite surprised that they all came back saying that they just wanted to look at their life as a whole and see where
Mm,
and where they wanted to go, which was really lovely. And then yeah, just kind of pitch different ideas to them and see what lands for the most of them. And then the structure is very similar to a coaching session where we kind of have a bit of a chat beforehand to see how everyone is on the day, then give them a bit of a rundown of what they might expect, kind of set the scene, check that everyone's got everything they need. I like to introduce myself with like photos as opposed to words, just so people get
nice.
an idea, and then ask them to do the same thing, and then just kind of proceed with the coaching.
Yeah. What was the most personal? What was the photo you shared that you were most self-conscious about sharing?
Oh, great question. To be honest, there weren't any where I was like massively self-conscious, because I feel like one of the things I actually learned from you, believe it or not, was like being comfortable with who you are and showing up in those spaces. So I shared the photos that made felt like the most like me.
Mm.
But I suppose the like weirdest one was I found a heart-shaped potato like last year and then cut it into
Mm.
different slices and cooked it. And I showed a picture of those heart-shaped potatoes to like symbolize that I love cooking and I love cooking with the people that I really care about and having and sharing a meal together.
Mm.
But that was the one that I suppose was the most quirky because it didn't really look like a potato, and a lot of people were like, "What is that?" But that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the rare cases in life where you found something that you really enjoyed and you decided to cook it and eat it, it being totally okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Talking about quirky, I just yeah riffing with that one. And for those that maybe don't have a context, Felicity and I worked together on the Mo training course last year, the year before. I worked quite closely together on that, and both had an impact on each other, obviously. Amazing. So you had this really open experience in this group, and where was your attention during that group session? What were you focusing on?
question. Excuse me. Well, I suppose I always like to set some intentions for myself before I actually go into the space of where I want to be paying particular attention and I suppose my energy was mainly into creating a space where the women felt like they could be honest about the things that they're optimistic about, and also honest about the things that they're finding really challenging. I've noticed that, well, generalizing massively, in the area where I am in France, a lot of people are really good about talking about the things that are going wrong, and that's completely great, and I love that. But obviously, coaching, we try and be a bit more. You don't have to be positive, because you obviously have to acknowledge all of the stuff that's going on neutrally in a way, but kind of bringing in that element of we can do this, encouragement, positivity was just something that I was particularly aware of. And I feel like we managed to do that in a way, which was nice. There's definitely progress to be made there, but yeah, I feel like that was where my main energy was focused on.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And specifically, were you coaching them as individuals, kind of individuals in turn, while the rest of the group were doing things, or were you coaching them as a group and they were responding just personally, or like maybe with writing prompts, or were they coaching each other?
Yeah, great question. So I had prepared some slides beforehand with like a variety of different questions. We did a helicopter view. So for those of you that
Mm,
aren't familiar with that, it's basically where you take a view, like a really high view of your life and where all your energy's going and all the different areas of your life and how they interact. And it's a really good exercise for you to just get a bit of a basic understanding of what's going on at the moment and what you would like to be in there, and those kind of things. So for that particular exercise, obviously everyone was doing their own one, and then at the end of it we kind of shared and spoke about the different things that we wanted to look at, that they wanted to look at and they wanted to work on, and then we moved on and did like a bit of a goal setting exercise. So I would ask them some questions that were also written on the board, and then we would discuss it as a group.
nice.
So it was definitely like a group session, if you will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, it really strikes me hearing about how coaching, we're really normalizing people's experience and validating their experience on a personal level, and maybe in a group setting we have that same sense of validation, or oh yeah, my experience is normal, how I'm not crazy to be responding this way, or like, but in a societal context, or in like that sense of normalization or validation is connected to the society or the community rather than just on a personal level.
Mm.
How present was that, or did that sense feel in this workshop?
Great question. I mean, in a way, the women were all entrepreneurs in kind of the bien-être space, which is like the well-being space.
Mm,
So not all of them, but we had a couple of like massage therapists. There was some yoga instructors. There was, so I feel like even though there was a kind of societal sense of expectations, and they've all kind of broken the mold a little bit, if you will,
mm,
anyway. So that didn't feel as present in that space as I found it in certain other spaces.
mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, these people maybe didn't need that sense of, or weren't looking for, or weren't being called to provide that sense of validation and normalization for each other because to some degree they already experienced it.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Okay.
And the fact that I think I'd met them a couple of times, they'd all met a couple of times as well. We'd already discussed some of those things and like the daily challenges and joys of being an entrepreneur. So maybe some of those had already been covered and were present in the space, and that was okay.
Nice, nice. Wicked. And coming back to your portfolio career and kind of looking at it in quite a broad sense, what conscious decisions have you made in how you structure your work week or your work month, or even specifically a single work day?
Great question. So to be honest, I've been thinking about this quite a lot recently. I set myself some pretty specific goals this year, which were to grow my coaching business as an individual, but in a very unique way. So kind of breaking some of the patterns that I have experienced in this space. So for example, I don't have a niche. I
Mm,
don't have a specific set of price lists. I kind of vary it depending on
mm,
who I'm working with, because I got into coaching and my coaching was funded by an organization, and had it not been, I wouldn't have had the experience that I had with coaching, because I just simply couldn't afford it at the time. So that was one of my main goals. The second one was to expand as a trainer, because I really, really, really love and get a lot of passion from being in those spaces where adults can learn together. And then kind of tapping into a bit more of like my artistic side of things. So I really wanted to work on some like maybe doing some music shows, maybe some more voice overacting, maybe a bit more of acting, those kind of things. So yeah, but a typical work day, what does it look like for me? So I have many rituals in a very kind of like structured way, but they're also very unstructured in their own way. So have a bit of contrast there, but I always start my day off with a nice cup of decaf PG tips, good old English breakfast tea. Take it back to bed with me, do Wordle or some like mind games on my phone.
Yeah.
Do some morning stretches in bed, do a meditation. At the moment, I'm doing a meditation with like a cold pack on my face because it's so warm. And then basically just I try and like safeguard my mornings for me and my own well-being, whether that be yoga, going for a walk, going for a run, making smoothies, ginger shots, those kind of things that actually genuinely make a huge difference to my life. Make sure that I have a really healthy meal that I cooked for myself for about an hour, which is one of the biggest blessings of my life, that I get to do that at lunch. And yeah, my afternoons are mainly just spent working, and I can work until about 10 p.m. if the day calls for it, basically.
Love it. And this is why I always love asking this question, because you get such a range, such a diverse and rich range of answers. So it sounds like no work in the AM.
I try not to as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. And then a sense of comfort in working until late evening.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Especially because some of the people that I work with, you know, they're doing a 9 to 5 or they're at university or stuff like that. So those free moments are in the evenings, which is fine with me.
Nice. And then let's zoom out a bit from like a specific day. How do you shape or sculpt your work in a typical week?
So my Mondays are normally my admin day. So that's just like emails, invoices, a lot of French administration admin stuff that you have to do being an entrepreneur. So my Mondays tend to be like my reset day, and then I'll plan how I'm going to spend the rest of the week, making sure that it's balanced. Other than that, there's not really much structure. I try and make sure that I take at least 1.5 days off a week, which doesn't necessarily have to be on the weekend. And I go to my yoga class twice a week. But apart from that, there's not really much structure. There's a lot of time spent with friends and family, and then yeah.
Okay, so working as much as 5.5 days a week in some weeks.
Yeah, on some weeks, but it's always going to be fractured. So I'm always going to make sure I take a break between sessions, or yeah.
Okay, and then like zoom out again from like a week and even beyond a month. Like, how do you structure things like, do you have any checks on like the amount of annual leave you take or anything like that?
Great question. So I know that my Augusts are always no working time. Yeah, I don't. Well, it's definitely a very French thing. I've heard that some of the European countries do it as well, but it's just I don't know if it's the combination of the heat or what it is. But in August, I just don't work.
Yeah.
And then for the rest of the time, in a way, I don't really consider my job. It obviously is a job, but it doesn't feel like something that I have to take annual leave from. There's so much flow and structure in the way that I follow my week. So if I don't want to work for 3 days or 4 days 1 week, and as long as I've structured that in a couple of weeks before, then that's fine. So yeah, the only real kind of chunk of time where I'm like, I'm definitely not working here is the whole month of August, which is a very nice holiday. But yeah.
Yeah, I when I was living in Spain, it was really typical that most shops would be closed in August. And it was just, it was treated like the whole city would shut down because people would be on holiday, or they'd go somewhere slightly cooler, or they'd go to the coast.
Yeah, exactly. I live quite near the coast, so a lot of people come to this area, which is really lovely.
Nice. And have there been any big shifts in your portfolio career in the last few years?
Well, I suppose that I'm actually doing what I do is probably the biggest one. Until about 3 years, well, maybe I'm not really sure if it was 3 years ago. I think maybe 3.5 years ago, I had no idea what coaching was and was kind of set to work in a big international company in London. And I thought that's how my life was going to go. So the biggest shift is that I decided that wasn't what I wanted, and the universe just kind of aligned, and here I am, and I absolutely love what I do. But yeah, definitely learned a lot of lessons along the way. But yeah, I just feel really grateful that I'm able to be here and do what I do.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about that moment. Maybe it was when you were in London, maybe it was before, of when you first started thinking about coaching as a possible career.
Mm. So yes, I basically didn't really have any idea what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Mhm.
um, Throughout most of my life, suffered quite badly from anxiety, even though I didn't know it up until the age of about 23, and had a burnout after I finished like well, it was around the same time of working for 1 year in a company in London in 2021, I think. So graduated in 2020, got my degree, was following the traditional path that I thought was the one that I was going to follow, and genuinely believe that that is what I wanted to do as well. Like, it wasn't just, this is what everyone's told me to do, so this is what I'm going to do. It
Mm.
genuinely felt like those are the boxes that I was going to tick. And then I kind of got to the stage where I ticked them. I had a lovely apartment that I was living a very successful life, and I'm very happy about that, but also was the most unhappy and the most anxious and the most depressed that I've ever been.
Mm.
So basically had a burnout, and just I remember the day so clearly in my head where I just accepted that I was no longer going to do things that I didn't want to do. And that basically got rid of 99% of the things that occupied my time. And that was I can't really remember whether that was like 2 or 3 weeks after I'd started coaching, or if it was before. It was kind of a blur in my mind, because yeah,
Mm.
that's just one of the things that happen when you go through burnout. But it was definitely around that time that I discovered coaching. And up until, I'd say, a year after I'd got my coaching certificate and had my coaching, I still didn't think that it was going to be a career or something that I wanted, something that I would do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And where do you think you might be in a few years' time?
Great question. I think as a human being, I will be evolving, growing. I hope I've learned so much and discovered so much of the world, and that I'm happy and healthy. And yeah, in terms of my career, I honestly don't know.
Mm.
Not to say that I don't want to keep doing what I'm doing, but I'm also very open to following whatever comes my way that feels like the right thing to do, the next right thing to do.
Mm. And it sounds like at the moment you're slightly rebalancing your portfolio to lean more into coach training.
Mm, yeah, definitely. Well, Mo completely changed my life on a personal and professional level. And I've also noticed that I get more kind of energy from doing the 6-week courses as a trainer than perhaps I do coaching over a long period of time. That's not to say I don't get energy from it and I don't love it, because I do, but it somehow just feels a bit more like the direction that I want to be going in, or focusing on a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay. And um, when we spoke a few weeks ago, you were talking about the workshops and that being still relatively new in your portfolio. What position might they have in this future portfolio for you?
Well, yes, no, they're still new. The truth is, I don't know. And I've had quite a lot of experiences where people have suggested things to me or said, oh, it would be really good if there was someone who could do this kind of workshop. And I've thought, hang on a minute, I can do that. And then I'll put myself forward, and then it kind of happens. So I see them as kind of like gifts of the universe coming through a person or coming through an experience or something. And um, those are what the workshops have been for me recently. So if they keep coming and it still feels like something that's right and that I want to do, then I'm going to keep doing them.
Mhm.
Otherwise, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. And yeah, want to echo what you say about the Mo course really lighting you up and it being something that's changed your life. I had a similar experience, as you know, and yeah, it feels like in many ways I love coaching. I get a big buzz from coaching my one-to-one coachees and clients, and it feels like some of the best work I do is for training, and such a privilege to run this course, and it's so enjoyable, and there's always so much richness in the room on each day, and watching the evolution of people as they come to coaching, sometimes for the first time, and learn about these communication models. And I think maybe it's something like it takes you back to when you learned, or
Mm.
it reminds me of that like journey of discovery as I was training as a coach and like realizing how I could treat people with so much love and care and attention. It was just, it was such a surprise. Yeah, not realizing I could do that, or that we've all got that capacity in some way.
Yeah, completely. I think there's also the element of like creating a team and being part of a team where mistakes are encouraged. We just want everyone to put their best foot forward and give it a go, and that kind of atmosphere, in my opinion, is quite unique nowadays in like a working environment. Definitely was a new experience for me, and there's something very healing in that for me. And I've seen a couple of people throughout like who've had a very similar experience and just get so much from it, which is just such a blessing that we get to even witness or be a part of that experience for them.
Yeah. Something that changed in my head, kind of flipped a bit of the switch, was when I was training on the Mo course and moving up the trainer's pathway, and realizing that as well as us providing this really accessible container for people to learn coaching skills that for many people for many of our participants is totally subsidized. We, in our training teams, for those that don't know, each course has a training team of 4, of which at least 2 or 3 will be paid, but 1 or 2 will be volunteers, just starting to learn the craft of facilitation and training others. And when I realized like that, as well as this course being a vehicle to give great access to coaching, it was also a vehicle to give great access to training, to learn as a trainer, to learn how to facilitate. I was like, our job isn't just to provide this container for these trainee coaches, but it's also to provide this container for these trainee trainers. And that just as beautiful as us proliferating coaching skills throughout the world is us proliferating facilitation and training skills throughout the world. And it was a real light bulb moment of like, oh, okay, so as I'm leading these teams, like it's not like the end product just has to be this beautiful, perfect, polished thing, because it's not like we're just trying to produce incredible coaches in this. It's like each course we also upskill a trainer, a facilitator that's taking those skills of being able to hold space and teach others and facilitate all sorts of learning, whether that's coaching or something else, out in the wider world.
Completely. I mean, I was gifted a place on the Mo course, like I mentioned, and becoming a trainer, like the first time that I did it, I was so nervous, Alex, that I hardly spoke throughout the first training experience, because I was genuinely really, really nervous. I did it anyway, and thank God I did, because I wouldn't be here without it. But I wouldn't have got this next job that I've got with this other company had I not like taken that leap and decided to become a trainer. And discovered that I have so much love for it. Like I have so much love for creating those spaces where, like I was saying, people just meet you where you're at.
Yep.
Excuse me. So yeah, a lovely thing to do.
I also had a gifted course when I trained as a coach, and it'd be really interesting to see inside our organization on what percentage of our lead trainers were gifted places, because moving up that trainer pathway, especially before the recent pay restructure for trainers, did rely on anywhere from 3 to 5 volunteer courses or volunteering on courses where you're really involved in the delivery, which is a lot of hours to put in. And when I was in that, part of the reasons that felt really relevant for me was because I was feeling like I was giving back to an organization that had given me this amazing qualification for free. So I was giving back in a similar manner. And then I'd also sometimes look at it as like, oh wow, I'm really giving this organization a lot of my time and energy, and like so that they can offer this course. And then the other side of the coin, sometimes I'd look at it as, wow, I'm really gaining a lot from this organization. They're training me to be an amazing facilitator. I'd look at it as like, I'm getting free facilitation training. And sometimes I'd feel more like one, and sometimes I'd feel more like the other. And once I was at that paid level, that consideration kind of disappeared. But yeah, it'd be really interesting to have an understanding of what demographic or what route our trainers are coming to lead trainer status from.
Yeah, no, for sure. It would be really, really interesting. And I feel like there are many spaces where people are encouraged to just talk about where they were at. Like, I love that we've both just shared that, you know.
Mm.
Well, I don't know. Well, I probably would feel comfortable nowadays doing it in pretty much most spaces, but back then definitely wouldn't have felt comfortable to do that. But it kind of felt extra special in a way because my coach, who actually suggested who introduced me to Mo, who was coaching me through a wonderful organization called the Young Women's Trust, who coached me during that kind of burnout phase, was Tony, so one of the lead trainers, and he was my first lead trainer when I was on the training team. So it just felt like a beautiful kind of circle moment, to, you know, go from that space of self-discovery and discovering coaching to actually being a part of the training team with him. And yeah, it was lovely.
Yeah, brilliant. Similarly, when I was trained by Tony Phillips, and yeah, 2 years later, I was supporting him as he to deliver a course, as he was a team leader, and I was part of his training team delivering this course, and he was now no longer teaching me how to be a coach, but teaching me how to train other coaches, and learning from him again. Big shout out to Tony. And Tony is also the person you're talking about, isn't it?
He is, yeah.
Who coached at Young Women's Trust. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's beautiful.
And for those that don't know, Mo Foundation has a growing and fairly large cohort of lead trainers now who will run courses throughout the year. I think there's about 20 of us now. And some of us run courses on Wednesday mornings. For others, it's Thursday afternoons. And we all align with the Mo values and the kind of Mo way. And all have our kind of subtleties and our nuances in how we deliver the courses. And yeah, if you're curious about the Mo course, feel free to get in touch or look on at mofoundation.com. Look at the website under programs about how you can enroll. Something you mentioned earlier that I noted down, talking about growing your coaching business and describing yourself as not having a niche and being atypical when it comes to pricing structure. I feel like there's a lot of content and a lot of conversation in the industry about why niching down or finding a niche, for example, being a coach to postpartum mothers or being a coach to, quarter life, people who just graduated and navigating a career transition or working out their purpose or their aim in life. Having a specific niche, I feel like that's well spoken about and what you benefit from having a niche. Would you talk into some of the benefits you experience as someone who's a generalist rather than has a clear niche?
For sure. Well, to be honest, actually making that decision to not have a niche, it was quite a long process. It genuinely took me about 2 years to talk openly about it, because I just thought, well, I'm just figuring it out. I'm still figuring out what my niche is, especially coming from a business background, because that's what I did my degree in. You know, you've got to find your unique selling point, if you will, if you want to succeed in business and all this stuff. And yeah, so deciding not to niche down was basically because I realized that the people that I was working with and attracting, the one thing that they had in common mainly was that they wanted to change, but they didn't really know how or what they wanted to change into, which was a very similar thing to the things that drew me to coaching, if you will. But I found myself trying to, when I was talking about it and explaining the kind of people that I was working with and had the joy of coaching, that was the only thing that kind of the passion that came out. All of the others just seemed to be literally all over the place in terms of location, language, age. Everything was just completely different. And I loved that. And I got to the point where I didn't want to choose a specific kind of ideal client. My ideal client is someone who actually wants to change and is willing to do the work and be curious to figure out what that is, what that change looks like for them, basically. So the benefits of that has meant that I've been able to coach people who are, for example, neurodiverse, or are in their first year of university, or who are coming to retirement, or who are navigating life as new mothers, or wanting to lose weight, or wanting to find a romantic relationship, or struggling through burnout, or like chronic burnout. It means that I've been able to work with people facing and living different experiences in life, which has enriched me as a person so much, and also shown me that you can coach anyone on anything, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Maybe that will change as my changes, but it's just a joy, and I feel almost like restricted having to focus on one specific group. And I've had conversations with people who have decided to niche down, who talk about the one thing that people come to you for example, like you mentioned, first year of students of university or people who have just graduated. They come to you with one specific idea, but then you may coach them on a much bigger scale, on a much bigger picture.
Mhm.
So even though you're niching, maybe you're not really niching
Right.
specifically.
So you might draw them with your niche,
Yeah.
when actual fact, as soon as they start getting into it, as can be quite common, a coach you will find, at surface level, it was this thing that drew me to your niche, and actually the much deeper thing, or the root level challenge I'm trying to overcome here, is X pattern or mindset or tendency, which maybe isn't subject or content specific, but is more person specific.
Yeah, I think so. Well,
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I once had a client tell me, who works in the startup space, tell me that my me being outside the startup space was precisely the reason they did think I'd make a good coach for them, because I wouldn't be coming in with any of the same biases they had, and I'd have a fresh perspective. And we've been coaching together for a few years now, and I feel like it very rarely has any negative impact in my ability to coach them. And there might be some times where I'll need to ask for a small clarification, and often when I ask for clarification, or I do ask them to explain something that someone who was, deep in the startup space would understand, I feel like their explanation clarifies something for them. That idea of we learn most when we're teaching others, and in trying to put something simply for other people, it can show us what is most important, or what the key parts of something are.
Yeah. No, completely. I've also noticed that it can, like you mentioned there, it can almost be harder to coach someone on things that you may have a vast amount of knowledge on, or have like really similar lived experiences. Definitely at the start, I noticed that was one of the things that I struggled with. And I'm working with someone at the moment who's got quite a similar life experience as I've had, and which is one of the reasons why they decided to work with me, in terms of like living in different cultures, and traveling a lot, and all of those things that I've spoken about online. And it's actually been, I love working with this person, and but my experience of coaching them has been different, because I can really recognize myself in so many of the things that they're saying. So keeping that element of like empathy whilst being detached,
Mm,
it's almost been harder.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I think it's always a really interesting question, when we have relevant personal context to share with a coachee. How much is me sharing this going to help them? Maybe because it normalizes what they experience, or validates what they're experiencing, or gives them a similar but still different perspective to use. How much is it going to help them versus how much is it going to muddy the water, make it harder for them to express their own personal, unique thoughts on this, or see their way forward, or feel able to act in full agency rather than follow someone else's plan? Such a difficult question, no clear answer. Yeah, do let us know if you work out the answer to that one. Right in.
No, for
And
sure.
and yeah, just thinking, well, what advice would I give someone who's unsure about that? For me, it's advice that I'm often giving out in the Mo courses. One, follow your intuition, and then if you're still not sure on like whether that contribution, sharing your personal relevant experience, sharing that with a coachee. One, follow your intuition, and two, if you're still not sure, check in and try and have a transparent conversation with your coachee, which might look like, would you like to hear where this came up in my life and what I did? Or would you like to hear where this came up in my life? And would you like to just have like a totally fresh horizon of how you might respond to what's happening in your life? Or would you also like to hear how I responded to it? Might be might be how I'd encourage people to respond to it. But yeah, that advice that I feel like is so valuable is follow your intuition, and if you're still not, and then if it comes up again in your head and you're still not sure, try and have a transparent conversation with your coachee.
Yeah, completely. Is it okay if I add something to your advice there, Alex?
Please.
Thank you. I was going to say sometimes also checking in how what you've said has landed with them, or how true it is for them, or what they've taken from what you've shared can also be like the extra mile. But this kind of like bringing the coach into the space a little bit more has been something that I've been learning about with this ICF qualification. One of the beautiful analogies that was shared through Mo was that as a coach, you're basically, if you like sitting in the back of the taxi, so you're in the taxi with your coachee who is the driver, so you're going along the journey with them, but you're kind of taking a back seat and not leading the conversation, not deciding where they're turning or anything like that. And with the ICF training that I'm doing, I've realized that we're encouraged to actually kind of sit in the front seat next to the driver as opposed to sitting in the back seat. And it's definitely been a new experience for me, bringing myself and who I am a little bit more into coaching and creating that partnership in a different way. I haven't really made up my mind which one I prefer yet, but I think, like you said, just trusting your intuition, and the moments where one feels more appropriate than the other is where you've got to go.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I feel like coaching, I'm thinking of comparing coaching to therapy, and how for most modalities that I know of in therapy, there's a real sense of professional detachment in the person facilitating, in the therapist. And with coaching, it feels like there's a lot more involvement of us as coaches in the conversation. In the world of coaching, there's this whole spectrum of where coaches are really involved, or create partnerships with coaches where they're really, really involved, that we might more accurately describe as mentoring, or might have a real rich balance of mentoring and coaching, versus the more pure coaching models where we're really light touch and making sure that all of that facilitation or all of that direction is coming from our coachee.
Yeah. Well, I definitely was a firm believer that I still believe that the coachee knows themselves better than anyone, and that they've got their own answers, and that they're the ones that are going to find the next right thing for them, basically. So it's just, I'm not necessarily saying that that's evolving, but it would just be interesting to see how that changes. Like some of the work that I do with some students at university, one of the things they really encouraged us to do was share our experience at university, which made me feel really uncomfortable, because I was like, no, that's not why they're here. They don't want to listen to me talk about my experience of coaching, and I've had mixed feedback about it. So I think it really just depends on the person that you're with.
Yeah, and being really clear as a professional as well on what kind of coaching you're practicing. Some people definitely expect us as coaches to be giving them advice or telling them the answers, or sharing our experiences, and might feel a little left out in the cold if we aren't weighing in, giving our opinions, and other people will feel so empowered by that. So for me, it's about that, being really clear and setting really clear expectations in the contracting. What kind of coach are you looking for? What kind of coach am I willing to be for you?
Yeah, completely. It's actually that question: what kind of coach are you? Like, do you need me to be? Is actually a question I've started asking at the start of most of my coaching sessions now, because obviously having built up that relationship a little bit, they may need a different thing from you on one day to the other. So yeah, it's definitely just a flow. See what comes.
Yeah, I love that. And for me, that question sits in contracting at the start of a coaching partnership, and I really like it at the start of a session. Yeah, I totally agree that they may need different things on different days, and it's a rich opportunity for them to check in on what kind of coaching they want to receive. That's wicked. Thank you. Making a note in my coaching journal. And thinking about what other things we might learn from you today. You're saying another atypical way that you've navigated your coaching business is in your pricing structure. Tell us a little bit about what you've done there.
Of course. So I suppose the best way that I can explain it is that the whole experience of my pricing strategy has just been trial and error. I've tried out so many different models of longer length programs, shorter programs, one-off sessions, offering a variety of prices in each, especially because I work with people in the UK and in France, and different cultural expectations and those kind of things kind of come into play. But I've basically come to a place which feels comfortable for me and with my life at the moment, being that most of my like finances come from the trainings that I do and one-off like workshops and other bits and bobs that I do, I feel comfortable giving people three options for their pricing structure, for the pricing structures that I'm doing at the moment. So the first one is pay anything, whether that's €1 or £1 or €100 or £100, whatever feels comfortable in that moment, or whatever you felt and based on what you're able to give at the moment, or make a donation to a charity of your choice and just send me a screenshot or something that you've actually done this. Not that I don't trust you, but just that I've got my own record of it, should ever anyone ask. Or that we kind of have an exchange of knowledge, if you will. So one of the people that I'm working with at the moment is a masseuse, and I love the fact that I get to have massages like way more often than I would have ever experienced or hoped to in my life. And it just feels more like the kind of person that I am. Not that there's anything wrong with having a price structure, and I do think that people should pay for coaching, but I also didn't want to alienate the kind of person that I was when I first got coaching, especially because there's a lot of people, even nowadays, although I think it's becoming more and more common, who have no idea what coaching is. So if you're thinking about trying something out and you have to, pay thousands of dollars or euros or pounds or whatever to try this experience out, then for some people that's just going to be a big no-no and they're not even going to do it. I'm not saying it's the same for everyone, but yeah, for the moment where I am at the moment, I just want to kind of attract the person with where they're at, regardless of the kind of financial aspect of it. But honestly, I only made this decision about 6 weeks ago. Yeah, well, I only kind of like finalized it and started talking about it with people about 6 weeks ago. Before that, it was just something that was in my head.
Yeah, and 6 weeks on, how's that sitting with you?
Amazingly. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm working with people who knew what I did before. Like it's not like a surprise that I've suddenly become a coach, but they hadn't made that first step. And if anything, I'm making more money from it this way than I was before. I mean, yeah, but I don't know. It is still one of those things that I still feel a little bit of imposter syndrome about, a teeny tiny weeny bit, but that's okay. I'm just trying it out, and so far it's going great.
Yeah, and I'll just immediately rename your imposter syndrome to imposter tendencies because it's not something that you've got for a life, but we all have these tendencies that just come up. And what do your imposter tendencies say when they are active or audible?
Oof, good question. To be honest, I embrace them as friends, so they don't tend to stick around with me for very long because they kind of get a message and then love me and leave me, which is lovely. But the biggest one that I think I had to focus on with coaching that kind of stuck around for the longest was my age, because I started, my first experience when I started coaching, I was like 23, 24. And the first time I publicly spoke about it was to a group of French people who were at least twice my age. And I had quite a strong reaction from a lot of them because they didn't really know what coaching was. And a lot of people were like, you're so young, how are you going to tell me how I'm going to live my life? And, had it just wasn't really what I was expecting. And then, it took me a while to kind of get over that and to come to the realization that it's not about age, it's about experience, it's about who you are as a person, and that you don't have to justify that to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, love that.
Yeah. So that was probably the biggest one, but I still have moments nowadays where, it's just human, and that's okay. So, yeah.
Nice. I really enjoy explaining it, and that kind of guru misconception that we need to be like old, sage, very, very wise. I think of it as like the guru misconception, but your life coach needs to be that. I explain it to people as like, I'm not coming down from a mountaintop to tell you, oh, you should do X, Y, Z to get here. I'm coming down from the mountaintop with my expertise in these communication models that will allow you to come down from your mountaintop and lead yourself.
I love that.
I'm just coming down to walk shoulder to shoulder with you, and I'm going to use my communication skills, which I am an expert in, not because I've gone through life and like learned all the wisdom there is to gain, but because I've done this specific qualification to learn this specific tool that I can pragmatically use to help you draw out your own guru from a mountaintop.
Definitely. I love that, and worked very hard in order to get here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm still dying to get 18-year-old Tasmanian woman who I trained on the Mo course years ago onto a podcast and see where they're at. And because young voices in the coaching industry are rare and they're so valuable. And of course, we need young coaches just as we need like older coaches. Of course, we do. Yeah, tangent. You mentioned skills exchange with a masseuse. I absolutely love skills exchanges. I think they're fantastic. Yes, absolutely. Let's get paid. Money is still has a really important role in society, and there's just something so delicious and sentimentally rich, or that has such a nice sentiment when we're exchanging skills rather than the masseuse paying you for coaching and then you paying a different masseuse for coaching. Just sharing that time.
Yeah.
And I'd love anyone who's listening to share on LinkedIn in response to this post. If you search Felicity, you'll find the post. If you might be listening 6 months after it's published. But if you search Felicity on LinkedIn, you'll find our post. And I'd love anyone to share skills exchanges they have in the comments, because I think it's absolutely great. And to share two from my own, I do a skills exchange of coaching with another coach who is incidentally also called Alex. I do a skills exchange with my piano teacher, and that's actually restarting this afternoon. And he teaches me piano. I coach him. And I also have a very informal skills exchange with one of my current housemates who does amazing crochet. They do these fantastic like hoods, balaclavas, bonnets in the softest material, with all sorts of like funky adornments. And they've made me one in return for 5 hours of coaching.
Wow. I feel like there's going to be so much demand for these amazing pieces of crochet artwork. I want one myself.
Yeah, for anyone listening, they're hoodwinked online, fantastic work, and they're a lovely human being. Great, I love being able to plug my housemate's work. I didn't expect to be doing it on the podcast, and here we are. Okay, your coaching business is atypical in the sense that you haven't niched down. It's atypical in the sense of your pricing structure. What advice would you give someone who's exploring their niche or is thinking about setting a niche or embarking on a journey without a niche?
What advice would I give them? I suppose it would be that just if you're trying to figure it out and you don't really know exactly what it's going to be, where you're going, what the end destination is, then just do it like with a teeny tiny consistent action to start with, whatever that might be, just something that feels like the right next step. And then eventually you'll figure it out, because that next step may be the wrong thing or it may be the right thing, but you'll have that feedback internally which will say, okay, this is definitely the right direction, or this isn't this is the wrong direction, but I actually like this element of it, which then will take you off into another path. So it's just being curious about it, making it okay that you don't know at the moment, and that's fine. And to be honest, that's advice that I give myself on a very regular basis anyway. There's also this element though where I don't really know how to phrase it, but there's this element of me which is like, I feel a bit uncomfortable sometimes about giving advice to people. Like, for example, I did a conference last year with Mo where I spoke about my experience of anxiety and what that was like. And there was this real element of me where I was like, I want to make people feel like it's okay and also share my experience with them. But I was in my situation was my situation, and I was really lucky to be able to move in with my parents for a while and leave my job and leave my ex-boyfriend. And, I was really lucky to be able to have the break that I needed. And there was this element of me which is like, I don't want people to think that they have to have this radical life change in order to recover from a burnout. So I'm just really careful about the advice that I give to people and try and stay away from it as well. Yeah, unless I'm asked very specifically like you did right now, but I'll always kind of give a little bit of a brackets. This is just my experience.
Yeah. And it's so funny, the awareness we have as coaches, even just asking you to give some solicited advice. I was just really aware of like, oh, I'm asking a coach to give advice. And predictably, the advice you gave was, figure it out by doing.
Yeah.
Find your own answer and like explore it and sit with it, and you'll get there. Which is great advice. Thank you. And is there anything? Would you change or adjust that advice when talking about price structure, or are there any nuggets that you would give?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like we could do a whole podcast on that just in itself, because I think it all kind of, you can make it as big or as small as you want, not in terms of the actual money, but in terms of how much it means to you.
Mm.
And I think that kind of depends on the relationship that you have with money to start with.
Mm.
And all the beliefs and values and everything that you've got tied to that. That's not a word. Tied to that.
Mm-hmm.
So would I change any of it? No, but I would, again, be curious about whatever feelings you're having that are coming up when you're thinking about charging or not charging or doing this or doing that. But also knowing that I certainly say this to most people when they finish the Mo course, is that they can charge as soon as they finish the course. They have done the training, they've got the qualifications, they've got the skills. Be honest about the fact that we're all still growing and we're all still learning, and that you're not, like you mentioned, that old guru on top of the mountain with all the answers.
Yeah.
That's not who you are. But just, you can start charging for coaching and just do what feels right for you, basically.
Yeah, I really love that advice of something you might want to consider is feeling into your relationship with money and letting that guide how you do pricing. And
Sure.
something I share with our recent graduates. For me, the biggest encouragement of why it's relevant for them to start charging, or why it can be useful to start charging quite quickly after graduating, is thinking of the value they're already providing. And we see it in the practice sessions we hold on the course, like the amazing transformations we have on our participants as they go through the course, because they're also receiving like weekly coaching from other people, and so they experience this amazing value. They understand it, and then hopefully also feel empowered to start being compensated for that, whether that's in massages, crocheted hoods, piano lessons, or good old-fashioned money.
Exactly. And my mum always describes me as someone who's like, I don't really know if I should share this or not, but I'm going to anyway. She says that she used to be a tax lawyer, so she kind of got to the stage where she was dealing with a lot of people who had a lot of money. And she said that once they kind of, from her experience, once they got to the stage, they realized that money wasn't actually the be all and end all and all this jazz. And she says that I've kind of had that experience of my life without actually ever getting to the point where I have loads of money.
Yeah.
But that's fine, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you took a shortcut. You got the wisdom without having to, commit 20 years to a career to get you to a high paid enough role. Fantastic.
Yeah. And I love that I actually get paid to be who I am, which I think is just the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great tagline for this episode. Get paid to be who you are. Like that's, I think, the dream for all of us when we're thinking about our living, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you hear it as a really common story. Like, I could get paid to, and it's like watch TV or do this or do that. What about just being who we are?
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap up this episode with a round of quickfire questions. I want very, very brief answers.
Go for it.
First of all, what's your favorite physical stretch?
Oh, favorite physical stretch is what's called child's pose.
Great. Most used social media platform in your professional life?
LinkedIn.
In your personal life?
Mind Valley, does that count as social media?
I guess. Yeah. If you treat it as social media. What's the biggest thing you get when you are coached?
Oof. Oh, there's so many. What's the biggest thing I get when I'm coached? Learning and loving more about myself.
Gorgeous. And would you share a New Year's resolution you set this year, if indeed you set one?
Of course. I had one to read more books in French, and I've already read 4, which I'm really happy about. Nice.
Thing that you'd like to hear more people speaking about in the coaching industry?
Oof. In the coaching industry specifically, there's no such thing as a perfect coach.
No. And lastly, and I want you to take your time with this one, what's a question you would like to ask our community?
What's a question I would like to ask the Mo community? Well, the first question that came to mind was, how are you carrying the Mo hug forward with you? Like, yeah.
I love that. And for those that maybe they've only experienced the Mo handshake and they don't feel like they've really had the full hug, to really welcome you to share like where you feel in alignment with Mo's values, or where you see yourself being able to give a Mo hug to others, or maybe just what your understanding of a Mo hug is. Maybe you've heard other people mention it as well.
Yeah.
Hey. Felicity, thank you so much for joining us, talking through your experience, your thoughts, where things have been atypical for you. Looking forward to seeing what you do in the training space. Looking forward to seeing you in the Mo community and how you share the Mo hug onwards.
Oh, thank you so much, Alex. It's been such a joy to be in this space with you as always. And yeah, sending much love to you and everyone else.
Awesome. Goodbye.